Hey everybody! Welcome to 30 Ways to 30 Days. I'm Alana Yvonne from Truly Great Life, and this is way number 4. If you haven't already checked out way number 1 and 2, I would recommend you do because they are foundational. But let's just jump in. So way number 4 to happy days is using your character strength of social intelligence. So what is social intelligence? Social intelligence is like emotional intelligence. It's the ability to know your own emotions, your own motives, your own feelings, as well as the feelings and motives and emotions of other people. It's kind of like knowing why you feel and think and act the way you do and why others are thinking, feeling, and acting the way they do. And this touches on, social, emotional intelligence that you might be familiar with. It has to do with empathy. It has to do with reading the room. It has a lot to, do with basically being outside of yourself in addition to knowing yourself. So it's self-awareness, on steroids. How self-aware are you? How aware are you of your own feelings and emotions and motives? A lot of times, sometimes we don't want to go there. We're on automatic pilot, or we're reacting to something that is a habit, which I guess is the same as automatic pilot, or we're responding to a perceived threat, not like a physical necessarily threat. We're talking about like something that's perceived as like an emotional threat or a mental threat. It could be a threat really to ego, a threat to an understanding of a belief that you may have. And so, social intelligence is this character strength of self-awareness and other awareness, which allows us to be more empathetic when we have, when we're using it and when we're tapped into it. And so how do we do this? Well, first of all, why it's important, as is probably self-evident, is that without social intelligence, it's going to be hard to connect to people. Without social intelligence and self-awareness, it's going to be hard to really be connected to what we're experiencing and respond accordingly. We want to be response able. We want to be able to choose our responses to things that life throws at us. And if we have blocks or walls to what we are feeling, right, because we are feeling things separately maybe from how we're thinking or processing them, right? The feelings, you can't necessarily control. What you do about those feelings is something else. But in order to make informed choices about a response or reaction is to be aware of what it is you're experiencing. And the same is true with others. Okay, so in your personal relationships with friends, with family, with a significant other, with strangers on the street, whatever these interactions are, thinking of it from their perspective, trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes, reading the body language, being aware of their words, their tone of voice, being aware of your own words, your own tone of voice, what is being emitted, right? There's a reason it's called body language, because it speaks volumes, So if this is one of your top strengths, then you're probably someone who can walk into many different kinds of social situations, read the room, if you will, in a way that you kind of know how to communicate with different kinds of people. You're not looking to necessarily steal the spotlight, right? We're not talking about people who come in and are bull in the china shop, like it's all about them, right? It's really about how do we find ways to connect with people, and we want to connect with people where they're at. Otherwise it's just, me imposing my ego needs on someone else. Right? So being able to sense where someone else is at, how is this information that I feel like I want to share or ask gonna land? Because you can, as you use your strength of social intelligence, you can tell if someone's receptive to what you have to say or not. And there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of different religions and philosophies that guide towards these human relations, right? And these interpersonal relations. And there's a line out there about do not speak words that won't be received, right? It's just, not to confuse your own need to say something with maybe the person on the receiving end ability to receive it. So social intelligence is being self-aware on that emotional level, that feelings level, that motives level, and also sensitive to and aware of others, okay? We don't want to be in a situation where we totally negate our own experiences and feelings for the sake of being there for other people only, right? It's a balance. It's not about I have to be there, for my friends and my family and my work, and what I feel doesn't matter. It's about others, okay? It's also not about me, and how do I get my needs met? Screw everyone else. That's secondary. Okay, there is a win-win here, that social intelligence, the strength of social intelligence, enables for people in relationships, whether that's like a very small relationship interaction, right, or like a more long-term relationship, friendship, etc. Okay, so having the ability to, again, know what you're going through and know what someone else is going through, and having that empathy, okay, where you don't need to fix anything. It's not about you coming in and saving the day. It's about holding space for another person. It's about holding space for yourself. Okay, so when you're experiencing, let's say, positive emotions and you're on a high and everything's good, and it's good for another person, like they're in a good space, like that's like a more high vibe, like getting along, and it's easy to kind of read when someone is there. If someone is like in a really good place and someone else is not in a good place, how much social intelligence can you bring to that situation, right? I would throw out there that, for someone who is feeling like sadness or anger or hurt, it might be harder for them to be able at the same time to be fully present for someone who, is like, whoa, I just had, this amazing experience and blah, blah, blah. And they're not, necessarily there. So being aware of what you're feeling and honoring that can also enable you to kind of see it and give it space and make space for other people, obviously in a way that works for you. So here's the question. What if, I'm just clueless? Like, I've been told I don't really connect well with people. I've been told I don't really, I don't have very deep relationships. Like, what can I do, right? What can we do when we're not feeling that strength of social intelligence, okay? Not everybody has it, and that's okay. Or I should say, we all have this strength, but not everyone is using it or is aware that they even have it, okay? So as I mentioned in an earlier recording, we all have these character strengths, every single one of us, in every single culture, everywhere, okay? That is what the field, the researchers in positive psychology has found and has created over the last 25 years plus evidence-based approaches and research, towards kind of quantifying it and putting a little bit of, science behind these ideas that have been known to humankind for thousands of years. Okay. But the point is, what can I do now? Okay. So one thing is, if we know it's about being aware of ourselves and also being aware of others, so start with, where are you at? Okay. And if you're having, a great day and it's like an expansive kind of self of, more positive emotions and engagement and in the world and out there, then it's maybe easier to kind of dip from your bucket and share that with someone else. So easier to smile at someone, easier to ask a question and to think of the other person as opposed to you. If you just want to go out there and share everything about what's going on with you, but you don't ask a question in return, how curious are you about other people? How do you view other people? Whether that's personally, professionally, etc. Do you view them as means to your end? Do you view them, as someone once told me years ago in college, that he literally looks at other people as supporting actors in his movie? I was like, okay, that's an interesting approach. And, so my question would be, if you have an approach where it's about you and how does everyone fit into your needs, how is that working for you? If it's working, okay. But, research shows, and again, we're coming at this from a more, field of positive psychology approach, that it's when you're able to be there for another person, have like a deeper connection with another person, express empathy, curiosity, interest in another person, that leads to more, connected relationships. Okay? Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be seen on some level. Okay, most people. I won't say like everyone 100%, but most people want to be seen. Not necessarily like on a public stage, but by the people in their lives. They want to be appreciated. They want to be treated nicely, So wherever you are at, or the people in your lives are at, like, you absolutely have the ability to connect with someone on some level. So a basic thing, like I said, would be, can you share a smile? Okay, if a smile is out of the question for whatever reason, can you make eye contact? If eye contact is not, a possibility, can you like physically turn to someone when they're talking to you, even just like with your head? I'm thinking of one time, I was at like a networking event. Again, this is years ago. And it was literally, and maybe this is just true of a lot of networking, business networking events, but it was like, meeting someone, we're talking, and I can, like, the eyes, the body, it's like, oh, I don't know what I can get out of talking from you, or like, you're doing things that are not relevant to what I'm looking for. Like, that may be true anyways when you're in a networking situation where you're trying to see like what are connections and where it might be, a useful interaction or a useful connection. But, social intelligence, manners, common decency would kind of indicate like, give someone your attention and then move on. So when you give someone your attention, it's a respect thing. It's a like just a kind thing to do, representing or reflecting that you see that you are like in front of another human being. And that's a level of social intelligence. When it's obvious that someone is, interacting with someone purely for a gain, that's, I wouldn't call that social intelligence, right? So we want to be aware. And if you go in somewhere knowing that that's your motives, you can challenge yourself and say, all right, let's see how it works when I am asking questions about the other person. It's like the old joke, like, enough about me. What do you think of me? No, like, ask about the other person. Okay? Ask a question, body language to the person, eye contact, smile, get to know who they are. People are so wonderfully complex, so wonderfully multifaceted. You cannot judge a book by its cover. And if you do, you're missing out on like so much incredible humanness. So, do yourself a favor. And I would just say, how can you be more open to another person? Now, when it comes to the, emotions that you feel, how open can you be to what is coming up for you? And it may come up in a physical sense in your body. How much can you integrate what you're sensing or feeling and have space for that and empathy for that, compassion for that, self-compassion, right? So it's that self-compassion that also has to do with social intelligence in addition to compassion for others. Okay, so I want to make sure, I have a couple notes here. I want to make sure I bring up one thing. Okay, so this is just a few more ways, okay, that you can work and like beef up your own strength of social intelligence. You got to name it to claim it, right? So when you're feeling something, or if that's like too much, if you're not ready for that, or it just feels like that would be too hard, you can watch a movie or watch a video and just kind of try naming the emotions or the feelings that are being reflected in that show by the characters in that show or whatever it is that you're watching, okay? So, that can be a practice of naming these emotions. It reminds me of like, if you go online, you'll find like there are different magnets or worksheets of like all the different kinds of emotions, because when we feel something but we don't have the words for it, it can get complicated. So that would be one. the other thing is like really paying attention when you're listening to someone. Even if you're roped into a conversation you would rather walk away from, okay? Just if you were able to give like attention, you're not looking at your phone. That's a big one. Like, let's put the phone away, okay? Eye contact to the best of your ability. And then, none of us are mind readers. We're not in each other's heads, thank God. So what can we do to let another person know we're there with them is these like small little responses that indicate we're tracking with you, right? Like we're there with you. So, those little, right, I see, yes, repeating back to them in your own words, maybe depending on the context of the conversation of what it is that you heard, or I'm hearing this, am I reading, am I getting that right? Is that what you mean? Or help me understand, I don't really understand what you're saying at all. Having that kind of back and forth respects the other person, helps the other person feel seen and heard and acknowledged. And that boosts your social intelligence because, again, you are being aware of their motives, their behaviors, their thoughts, or not thoughts, but their feelings, right, that are coming through, their thoughts if they're expressed. And then you're also becoming aware of your own. It's a really just great practice. And we are living in some interesting times, friends, interesting times where these kinds of skills, these kinds of abilities are not obvious anymore. They're not givens anymore in a lot of situations. So to counter that, use some of these tips, some of this info, please. And if you don't, if you want to share the video, fabulous. If you don't want to share the video, take what you're learning, take what you're being reminded of, and teach it to somebody else. Share it with somebody else because the world needs our like strengths, and especially the one of social intelligence. Okay. So there's one quote here from Daniel Goleman, right? The author of Emotional Intelligence, Social Intelligence. He's a very big researcher, has had books out for decades. I love this though. If your emotional abilities aren't in hand, if you don't have self-awareness, if you aren't able to manage your distressing emotions, if you can't have empathy and effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are not going to get very far. Strong words, right? But they're really good. So another thing, if you're like, oh man, this like self-awareness, other awareness, social intelligence, if you're feeling like this is not one that comes more naturally for you or one that you're not using, when you notice, start to be curious about seeing other people in action, okay? Because we learn from others as well. We learn from what others model or don't model. Okay, think of a time when you were on the receiving end of someone like not being very socially intelligent with you. And, can you think of a time when you were not very socially intelligent with someone else? And then again, like a little bit of grace. And then how do we move forward in those relationships with being a little more connected, a little more in tune with the other person? Because even if what you ultimately want is someone to be giving you the time of day, one way to increase the likelihood of getting that is by giving someone else the time of day, right? We have to give to get. And it's this beautiful interactive cycle of like working together and caring for each other that leads to the positive emotions and the increased, healthy relationships that many of us are looking for, which makes us happier. Yay. Okay. And then one more thing I wanted to share is, here we go. Okay. So one of the biggest pitfalls, again, this is a Goleman quote. One of the biggest pitfalls in social intelligence is a lack of empathy. Okay. And Martin Buber, who is a Jewish philosopher, also like coined the term the I-it connection. And this is where one person treats another person as an object instead of a human being. So this could be like a whole video in itself, this idea of the I-it connection. So on a scale of 1 to 10, first of all, how socially intelligent do you feel you are? How much do you use the strength of social intelligence in your own life on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 would be like, that's definitely one of my top strengths, and 1 is like, maybe I'm not using that so much, and this is something for me to think about and maybe, explore more of how I can use it more often. And then the other thing is how much does this resonate with you as something to maybe look into? Do you see other people as it's, in the sense of, things that are people that are meeting certain needs that you have? So it's kind of like that one-way thing. Like, how much are you related to what I'm trying to do? And do I use you as a tool in that way? Or do I connect with you because it might get me somewhere else? These are really important things, I think, to consider. I mean, we see a lot of this just in our culture, in the news, in the day-to-day, maybe on a more personal level. But it's really something that we also have an instinctive sense of. So, for example, when you hear from somebody, okay, and you can tell that they're distracted. And again, this has to do with like paying attention and being curious. But how does it feel when someone is giving you like the obligatory call for something, or you run into them and it's like, you feel like it's checking off a box for them, okay? So how can you make it so that you see others as people and not, a to-do list, an item on your to-do list of like, oh, I got to reach out to them and we should, do this and that. Where can we bring more of that humanity in? Like the person behind the role or the person behind the potential of that connection, right? And that would be looking for the personal, the feelings, not in an invasive way, in just a human connection way. So not prying questions, but even like a simple, like more superficial question of like, how's it going? How's your day? And just kind of giving that opening, and listening for the answer. Not, hey, what's up? How are you doing? Okay, listen, blah, 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 blah. Can we make space for our own feelings and for those of others? Can we be on the lookout for opportunities to connect with people where they're at, to connect with people as people? So I think this is all I wanted to say about social intelligence today. Again, this is a way to happy days that I think can seem obvious. And there are wonderful, wonderful ways for you to boost that strength if it's one that you feel needs boosting. And please continue to share or start to share or at least implement in your own life. And baby steps is, a fabulous way to go. Just try one of the things that I've mentioned here. Try implementing maybe just one idea. If you want to go down the rabbit hole like I like to do, sometimes you can go look online for social intelligence, emotional intelligence, see what comes up, see what resonates. But I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day. And I'll see you next time for way number 5. Thanks.